So
There we go. Yay. Perfect. All right, we're just going to restart everything. Just kidding.
well, I'm just checking to see what's happening here on the live stream. Oh.
So it's very interesting what you're saying, Julia, about the different platforms and things, and also about the consistency of platform, and I think that makes a lot of sense just in terms of how people like to be communicated with, you know.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at bigger companies, they clearly have, many of them clearly have different strategies per channel because they know how different the target audience is on each of the channels used. However, what I recommend is always to look at the time you invest in social media marketing overall, because you got to be really honest with yourself, like what is the purpose of it? Do you have it just so if people look at it, that they see, wow, you're active and it's relevant content? Maybe it's enough to have the same content everywhere because they will not check out each single channel. However, maybe you notice that social media marketing is your primary, your primary way of finding new clients. Then you want to really also ask them, like, what content do you want to see and read and interact with? And do you want to have a different tone of voice like on LinkedIn, where it should be maybe more formal than on Instagram? And do you want to see more reels, or what, like understand what people are really looking for? At the same time, I know people who spend hours a day to prepare the social media content, and when you ask them how many clients do you actually see out of this, it's limited. So that's, I think, a typical example of everyone does their own thing, but no one really thinks about picking up the phone, calling relevant people from the target audience, rethinking the marketing strategy, understanding where you're headed, like, and really kind of choosing an approach that suits your business in a way, also in terms of time and value, like that you reach a balance here.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just looking at our live recording, and for some reason it just doesn't seem to be going onto the page. I've tried everything at this stage. Let's have a look. So I'll have to put on the recording, I think. I'm so sorry, Julia. This is so frustrating because this is about the 10th thing that's gone wrong by Zoom. I think the next one we'll do on we'll have to do it on Google, I think, on Google Meets. But it has been recorded now, so we'll record for the next 23 minutes. Oh well, next 7 minutes, and next time we'll make sure that it is recording right from the beginning. Terribly sorry about that. But yes, so Julia has been talking about looking for your target market, making sure that you establish that you do some market research in the form of surveys and asking other people that aren't connected to you personally about your business plan and things like that. Am I correct, Julia? And also your branding is really important at this stage too, when we first start a business. I really wish that I'd had you on my shoulder when I first started, Julia, because like you said, a lot of people jump in and then decide that they're going to do their marketing and everything themselves. I'm not sure if you were part of that camp, Bryony.
Yeah, I definitely. Well, I have been doing things myself, but now I'm working with a web design person who's updating and improving my website, which I'm really loving, having that interaction. And I also do work with a business coach who gives me input as well, so that I know it's invaluable to have the kind of service that Julia offers in her business, and I think it's a really valuable service.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Julia, if just say a new business person comes along, somebody who wants to start a business, and they wanted to get some mentoring, what would you say would be the priority, the three priorities of um setting up a business so that it is successful?
So usually I work with more established companies, but every now and then I meet people who really are just in the process of setting things up.
Yeah.
I think some people really, if they don't have to, they don't do a business plan. However, it's crucial because it gives you also your own direction and vision. And it can be a short one. Mine was 12 pages long, but it could be shorter. And I think you gotta understand, like, do you need a website to be out there, or is an Instagram page enough for the moment to really build your whole strategy around the people you're serving? But so usually it's great to also start with things that are for free anyways, because a website doesn't cost a lot. People can learn how to set it up themselves or they can pay someone for it. But it's something we can all do, otherwise there wouldn't be so many websites out there. And I would always focus on organic traffic at the beginning.
Yeah.
So really sitting down and understanding how can you get this traffic, and how can you optimize your website over the long run? Again, this is something where you can use an agency, or you can find a mentor who helps you develop and establish the knowledge in your company. But if you manage to get clicks through interesting pieces of content and articles and organic posts, then I think you save a lot of money, which is crucial at the beginning. And I meet a lot of people these days who are not the most skilled at sales, but you really need it. And they tell me, well, I need to be able to do it myself in order to pass it on to someone else. And that's not true, because if it's simply not your talent, it's very hard to acquire these skills. But there's a lot of people who love to talk and be out there and work on a commission basis.
Yeah.
And you just got to find them. And I think that's also really crucial at the beginning.
Yeah. I'm not really a salesperson, although I can do it if I have to. What I found being on a real budget, because and a lot of us are these days, a lot of us solopreneurs who have just started, getting out there, most of us, and a lot of the clientele that we work with are have had a career in something else. I was a teacher for 30 years, and find themselves in a place where they have to become more independent around their income and things, and that's exactly where I found myself, and I had no money, no funding to put anything together. So your advice around deciding whether you actually need a website, or whether you can just work off Instagram or Facebook or wherever you choose to work from, is really, really important. The one thing that I found, though, is that yes, I did start my own website, and I built it myself and designed it myself, which has been an enormous learning curve. And it is certainly not the website I started off with either, which would you say is that the long road to go? Do you think that your website should be up and running and looking the way you want it to look before you actually launch yourself? Or what's your advice on that?
So I have made the experience that if you have potential clients and then you don't have a proper website, this can turn them off, like put them off. But so also it's not just about the looks, it's also about what's the user flow, what's the journey, and also about technical factors like how quick is it loading, how does every image have a name kind of in the back end, you know, how does it show up Google search? Does it show up at all? Because some clients of mine, like in the past, they optimized their website wildly and then they forgot to submit it to Google, the sitemap. So it didn't ever properly show up on Google because it wasn't crawled, because they forgot that little tiny detail, which was so crucial and important.
Yeah.
So it's about really making sure that maybe having like a check once in a while, and to make a website, it can take a few hours, the most simplest type of website, and it could just cost next to nothing, you know, if you do it the right way. So why not invest this just to show your clients you can do it, and you can also manage their project, because yeah, I think it's not a huge investment, and it's really helpful to have it. And another thing that's really crucial, I think, is at the beginning, when you start out, like having partnerships with others. So thinking where are like companies maybe in a similar size or starting point, or even more established, where we could add value to one another. And it's always, I think, the hardest when you start your business by yourself at some point, you know. So it's all about building these relationships that can bring you further over the long run.
Definitely, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And sometimes those relationships, if you don't know which relationships to build, it takes time. So actually having a business coach, or having somebody that is experienced and that can give you some guidance right at the beginning, I think is extremely useful as well. Definitely. Right.
The next 2 sessions, just as a spoiler, at the next session I will be talking about growth hacking. So that's a specific technique how you must grow in a way, because there's no other possibility based on the principles applied. And in the 3rd session, I would love to give you a life coaching.
Oh, that would be wonderful. That sounds really, really exciting. Really exciting. Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you so much for your time and your effort. And apologies for the technical mishaps, which seem to be plaguing me at the moment. I shall get hold of Zoom and do what we call here the haka, which is a war dance. Really frustrating, but thank you very much for this. And for anybody who's watching the recording, look forward to the next business support and inspiration meeting, which is next month, usually the last Monday of the month. And tune in again, because we're really lucky to have Julia back again. Kia ora, Rachel. Sorry, I didn't introduce you. Everyone.
Okay, I turned up late, so you're not supposed to introduce latecomers, but thank you.
Have you got any questions? Has anybody got any questions for Julia at the moment? Yes, I'll definitely be putting links to Julia's website and contact details below the video and in the comments. So definitely.
I found it really helpful that you reminded me about phone calls, Julia, and that's given me an inspiration for something to do for the next month. So I'm very pleased about that.
Awesome.
I'm happy to do that.
I actually find that I always make contact, and then I always arrange a phone call or a Zoom call pretty much immediately, because I find it very difficult to communicate online on messages. So and that's I think most people appreciate that too. Yeah. Rachel, do you do the same?
Yes, I find that because of the work I do, so I work in dyslexia education, that each client has unique challenges they're dealing with, and so it's very hard to navigate it in email or on a WhatsApp. I mean, there's the initial stuff, but mostly where anything happens is when we are in communication, dialogue. So I'm sort of mixing it up between Zooms and phone calls. Sometimes Zooms aren't convenient for people, especially busy parents shepherding children all over the place. But I find Zooms are probably quite effective in terms of you can create a connection quite easily because you've got a few more senses going on. I wanted to backtrack a little bit to acknowledge Julia for mentioning about all those elements of your webpage. I've just recently gone through a bit of a horror story with my own. It was a second attempt at a webpage, and I'd hired what I thought was a very reputable agency. And I found what my latest webmaster said, your website has been built with duct tape. I'm not sure if that translates, Julia, into your language, but it's been hanging together by threads. He's been at work trying to improve. So we improved its load performance from 36% to 86% simply by doing some basic WordPress work. Thank goodness for good people. But yes, and I'm going to go back and check about the Google sitemap to make sure that we've let them know. There's all these things that the hapless entrepreneurs don't necessarily know unless they've worked in tech, you know, and my background's in education as well. So it was always a 0800 number to call when your PC wasn't working, but it's a bit different when you're doing your own gig and trying to figure out all these systems to hang together. And also I think about, I echo what you both said about collaboration, working with other related but not competitive, not competitors, but with other related people in your industry, but also other providers. You know, it's kind of like building a little team around you, because when you work by yourself, it can get kind of either frustrating or lonely or both on the same day, which is never nice. Yeah, having good people who may share a similar journey in some way, whether they're working on their own. Yeah, and I think all of that's really beneficial. So thank you. I look forward to your session on growth hacking.
Perfect.
I'm really looking forward to that too. So thank you very much, Julia. I'd like to now introduce our next speaker or guest, Samantha Macmillan, who it's actually Samantha Macmillan Strange, isn't it? Samantha. No, just Samantha.
It's Samantha Macmillan. My maiden name is Staney, but there's no R in it.
Oh, okay.
The family joke is 1 R away from strange, 2 R away from stranger. So no worries. I'm totally used to it. I remember being in school and listening to announcements, and I would literally hear, Samantha Strange, can you please come down to the office? Samantha Strange. And I would literally be a teenager sitting at this desk thinking, and you guys are in charge of my education. Can't you see there's no R in my name? What is going on here?
Isn't it funny how that just comes? I guess it's a brain thing that you make a word out of something that's not a word. Anyway.
Absolutely, the subconscious does it all the time. There was this really great Facebook post that basically kind of scrambled up the words, and it said that as long as you have the first and last letter correct, you kind of have the same number of words and an arrangement, then the brain doesn't even realize that it's misspelled until you recheck it. So,
well, there you are.
Unless if you're really great at spelling and pay attention, of course.
There we are, Rachel. Rachel will have something to say about that, but we're not here to discuss that.
Touche. Sorry, it was just fun. I couldn't help it. I couldn't resist there.
Absolutely. So sorry. I apologize. My brain did the same thing.
No worries. All is good. Thank you so much for having me here today as well.
Yes, so I'd like to introduce you as a VA, being a virtual assistant, but with a lot of flair. You can introduce your business and stuff, but it would be really lovely to hear from you, Samantha, about how connecting with a virtual assistant can transform and change your business, and what you are capable of doing, and perhaps talk about your your specialities, but what other virtual assistants could offer a business. So
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So my business name is The Infinity LLC. The emphasis is on the infinity part, actually, because when I was younger, this family game that we would have would be wrapped around the word infinity. And we'd play, it's called the I love you game. I don't mean to put that in quotations, so obviously we loved each other, but it would go something like, oh, I love you more. Oh no, I love you more. Well, I love you infinity. I love you infinity times infinity to the infinity of power, and you can't beat that. So I guess I kind of took that into my business as being obviously caring about my clients to infinity and beyond, so to speak. Not to like overdo that, but also that, we spend so much of our life thinking there's so many limits, right? Like that's the way our mind's shaped to believe, and it's just not true. Except for, well, time being the main exception. You can't really get back time, but everything else is limitless. And so that's kind of where I saw my business as being limitless to possibilities of the way that it could grow and help my clients. And with that being said, really depends on the virtual assistant that you have. There are some that are mostly, they handle emails. They kind of are like, I kind of explain to people that a virtual assistant is an assistant on steroids. But in a legal way, of course. Because, you can actually have them do a lot more than just the assistant in the office, and they can be from anywhere in the world. Depending on their specialties. I actually not only grew up with technology being around me so much of the time, starting from 5th grade, learning how to type on a keyboard, to being the one that my friends I would be the one to tell my friends about, okay, just to show my age, before Facebook, MySpace, and then Facebook, and then Instagram, and all the things. But obviously it's very different to have social media for your normal socials versus business. And there's definitely something in there, but I started also, so I kind of dabbled in that. And then I also learned how to create videos, like doing some video editing. And ironically, it was because I started with my own YouTube channel for a little bit of time, called Single Parents Toolbox. The editing wasn't the best back then, because it was definitely kind of more of an experimental website. But it definitely taught me a lot and everything that goes with it. So, I mean, from doing a thumbnail in Canva to using keyword search into your YouTube channels to get more reach. And then obviously video editing. So, and I even went out and got this really expensive equipment just to find out that iMovie was way better, because the money that I spent into the video editing literally wanted me to, spend more somewhere else later on, which was ridiculous. But it is what it is. And eventually what's really cool is that I did my own couple of websites with GoDaddy at first, and I did one for Single Parents Toolbox, and I did the other one for Infinity. And, you know, it was definitely a really great way to gain another skill set without even realizing that was any kind of direction that I was going into. And it started with that. And my first client, I will never forget, was actually my bishop at church. And he ran a dental office and was in the military, and he has his own family. He's like, he was just such a busy guy. And so having a website for his business was really hard for him to do, but he's needed for a long time. And I think there's a lot of controversy between if you need one or not, but I will share this other story about that later on and why I believe the way I do. But before I get to that, I basically went into his office and I said, you know, now you have a dental office. And I was really nervous, by the way, at the time, because I'm like, girl, what are you doing? But I'm like, I went into his office, and it was his bishop's office, and he said, you know, I honestly am having a hard time being a single mom right now, but I really don't want to ask the church for money. I'd rather just earn it. Is there, you know, I know you have a dental office. Is there anything I can do? I can help you with emails. I can help you with your Facebook page. I can help you with all these things. And then he's like, well, do you have a business card? And I'm like, not yet, because I was literally rebranding at the time. And I'm like, but I do have my website. So I grabbed my very, very humble tablet at the time. Like, we're not even talking an iPad here, guys. We're talking about like a very basic tablet that might as well be an ebook reader. Okay. And I pulled up my website. He goes, you made this? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm just thinking, oh gosh, is this going to be a moment where they complain about your haircut and think that you did it yourself and find out how bad it is? Because I'm kind of scared in this moment. And I'm like, and I'm just like waiting, all anxious. And he's like, this is actually really good. He's like, you know, I don't need all the other things you mentioned, but I really do need a website very badly. And I said, wow, okay, yeah, I could do that for you. And I'm like, I have no idea how much to charge or anything, but I will get back to him. And he's like, sure, no problem. And he became my first website client. What's really cool is fast forward, he loved the website. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize you gotta like kind of keep your domain up to date about every year or two, depending on how long you keep that up and going. Also paying attention to an SSL certificate, which is a very basic security just to show up as an actual website and legit, not like, oh, this isn't secure, let's run away from this site. You don't want that. So, and hosting, of course, as well. And then, but basically, one thing I would recommend to everybody now, the biggest piece of advice I could possibly give, do not get your domain before hiring somebody to do it for you. Because what happens is companies are going to fight over the domain, and then you're either going to lose the domain anyways, even though you spent money on that domain, or you're going to have to come up with another one either way, sometimes most of the time. GoDaddy was not very friendly about transferring his domain, and I fought with that company for months. I'm not even kidding. I fought for my client tooth and nail for months. And we had to rebuild him a totally different website on WordPress. So I learned a new skill and upscaled a lot after that, and learned the importance of backing up a website and why you should and why you really should not just kind of leave it to your own devices. No offense. It's a great start if you need to, but backing it up is so important. Otherwise, you got to redo the work all over again. But I will say as well that in regards to having a virtual assistant, as you mentioned, it really is going to amplify your business more because the power of delegation.
Yes, it releases you of a lot of stressful, pernickety little jobs that need to be done regularly and kind of curtail your creativity. You know.
Right. And not only that, but I mean, you're basically you got to just learn that you really can't do it all. Henry Ford actually realized this very early in his business. I know we're talking about cars versus what a lot of people do, but the thing still applies, right? He was smart enough to hire people smarter than him, is what he would say.
Mm.
He said how the impact of his business was not in him doing everything. It was in him hiring people smarter than he was to make his vision come true a reality.
Mm. Definitely. When you're someone like me, and possibly Rachel will relate to this because we're both neurodivergent in the fact that I'm actually dyslexic, but I'm also pretty ADHD in many respects. I find it quite difficult to. I'm okay with planning, but giving the detail of what's in my head, because I have a picture in my head, and a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
And handing that over to somebody else, for me, sometimes feels like more work than just banging it up myself. What would you say to someone like me who's I can plan ahead, but I'm really sort of quick on my feet and can change direction if I feel all of a sudden that I need to change direction. When working with a VA, well, as a VA, how would you handle a client like me who's like, oh no,
Well,
I want
to start with, no worries. To start with, I will say you're not alone in that. There's actually quite a few people out there that are diagnosed with ADHD or even ADD.
Yeah.
The difference obviously being, well, I shouldn't say obviously, I apologize. Let me take back those words. Let me keep those words for a second. For those of you that don't know the difference, ADHD is more of a hyper vibe to having an issue with paying attention and focusing on things. And generally it's because the individual they've done studies on this and everything, but generally the person who has ADHD is actually very highly intelligent, and they have a hard time reining in their thoughts and that focus. So that is kind of the difference for those of you that are viewing this and maybe don't know that. That's totally okay. We all have different types of intelligence out there. Absolutely. No shame in that at all. The other thing I would say to you is it would be in the way that I would handle you differently than some other clients. And I think that's the importance of being a service-based business, comes down to, are you paying attention to your clients? Or are you too busy being a speaking point to advertise your own? Because honestly, if you're more there for your clients, the other thing's going to happen automatically either way, because your clients are going to be the speaker for you eventually. But I would say one thing that, and I hope you guys don't mind me quoting Sunny Leonard Dixie, she's amazing. One of the things I did learn from her that she preaches is first is sales, but the second is definitely customer service. And so that needs to bear in mind. When it comes to, and I've actually had clients that have ADHD as well. And what I generally do is I just kind of sit there and actively listen for a while, because generally what they're really trying to tell you is a bit hidden than what they're actually telling you. And I don't mean to be cryptic about it. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't come across that way. But what they're actually saying and what they're actually meaning can be two different things at times. And so you kind of have to really actively listen and pause for a minute. And honestly, having, like somebody on here earlier mentioned, recording it, that would definitely be a thing with recording the meeting so that you can go back and go, okay, wait a second. I took it as she wanted this, but I think she actually wants this. Maybe we need to clarify this a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And so that is one of the things. The other thing I would say is, and coaches do this in a different way and all the time, right? And I would say I'm a lot like a coach, but I'm very different than a coach. A coach is going to just be there on the call with you, head on, be like, this is where you're at. These are the goals you need to meet. This is the date you need to set this at. This is how you get to this goal, right? A VA, on the other hand, is going to be more like
doing it.
Kind of give more of a submissive-ish vibe to, and going to say something more like, you know, earlier, this was the plan. Is there a reason that we're going to this instead? What is your thought process in that? Because generally their thought process is, I need results faster, and it seems like this is the path to go. But are they fully correct on that? And it goes back to marketing again, like she mentioned. Who's your ideal client? Who are your audience? Where are they at? What are they going to be grabbed? What is really going to grab their attention? You know, and it also goes down to and I'm probably going off a tangent, I apologize, but I just got to say this real quick, is that it also is paying attention to your marketing colors, because they do have different meanings, just like different flowers do. McDonald's was brilliant in their marketing. McDonald's is a fast food chain, but really they're more into real estate, as you know. They were brilliant because they used the colors gold and red. Red is going to rush you in to come in and get something really fast. Gold gives a sense of happiness and kind of like an elegance, royalty type of a feel to it. Makes you think you're getting your money's worth. And the M is a very simple, hey, this is McDonald's, but you know what? You're never going to forget us, because there's that M. Every time we go by, that kid's going to go, ooh, there's McDonald's. I want to go, mommy. And you're going, they really don't taste that great, kid. If I'm going to get anything, I'd rather go over here, but okay, darn their marketing.
Exactly.
So that is definitely, there's a lot more that a VA can actually bring to the table. It's just a matter of who they are, who you are, and kind of mixing that a little bit better and kind of figuring that out.
Yeah, so it's really important that if you are going to hire a VA, that there's a really good rapport, relationship connection, if you like, because they're your avatar in many respects, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, how should I put this delicately? Because that is such a hype thing in the market today too. To be super honest, in my business, particularly, for example, my avatar for a website is going to be different than my avatar for a virtual assistant, or my avatar for a video editor, or XYZ. And generally, a lot of the people that need me are either growing and really do need the help, or it's that, and they also are kind of have some challenges that arise with technology as well. It just kind of depends. Yes. So that's kind of what it really boils down to. And I will say, having a VA, not just looking at like, oh, how much is this going to cost me? Because quite frankly, your ROI on all of that is going to be huge. So you really shouldn't be worried about getting the cheap VA, because you get what you pay for. But what you should worry about is, can they communicate effectively with me with my language? Because a lot of times, and I have no problem with going different countries and everything like that. I will say that there is the USA side of me that when I call somebody, or not when I call somebody, but when I deal with like being on the phone forever with like T-Mobile, for example, they're from exactly. I can't understand a word they're saying, and then I get frustrated because I'm like, can you like, are you even hearing me, or is this? And I know it's like a language barrier thing, even though they're saying all these things that sound like they understand what I'm saying. The bottom line is language is very complex, and they really don't. I've actually dated a man from, and I really liked this guy a lot. Unfortunately, it did not work out because in his culture, the mom not approving of you is a huge ordeal. And also he didn't vibe with my son. So that just was a no-go for us. But I will say that there were many times I thought his mom and I were vibing and clicking and that we understood each other. And then I found out that Chinese culture actually, Mandarin Chinese language actually has a lot of different dialects. So even though it seemed to me like she understood everything I said, our communication was always lacking.
Yeah.
And she actually learned really well, as she's a very impressive woman, very intelligent, learn English on her own, I'll have you know. I mean, very intelligent woman. Just unfortunately, there are some things that, you know, it's just hard to learn.
Absolutely, because language is culture. So yes, it's really important that you look at what the communication channels are like. You know, cheap and cheerful isn't always cheap and cheerful.
Right, absolutely.
Absolutely.
You know, it's funny too, because I actually ran into somebody that they were trying to kind of sell me on doing some type of a, I don't know, something. I'm not even sure fully what they were doing exactly, to tell you the truth. But when they had conversation with me, they were trying to get me into some kind of MLM. I'm not sure which one it was per se, because they never answered. But one of the things she tried to tell me is, you know, your business as a VA, you're not going to, I'm sorry, but a lot of the business is going to go to these other countries and blah, blah, blah. Ironically, that same day, I had, well, who's now my client, by the way, they actually reached out to me and they're like, I'm like, you know, it's so, and I literally told them this in the Facebook chat when we first reached out too. I said, you know, it's so funny. I was just literally told that a lot of people didn't want to have VAs from the US anymore. And she's like, I will not hire anything but right now because, you know, the language barrier and everything. So, and that's not to say, you know, other countries cannot be good VAs or anything. It just depends on your culture, your background, your language, because communication is important. So you really need to be able to effectively understand each other. Otherwise, how are you going to delegate properly? How are they going to understand tasks properly? If they are, you know, a sales VA, for example, which I am not a sales VA, I will say that up front. But a sales VA is going to have a hard time reaching out as well and getting your ideal clients, because, you know, if your ideal clients are not speaking the same language they do, it's going to be more challenging.
Yeah. So basically, also, it's just occurred to me that it depends on what you need a VA for too, as well, because you
Bingo.
if you know, if you're needing the technical side of things, then you need a VA who has that quality. If you need somebody who will do the sales for you, you need a completely different type of VA.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Absolutely.
How would you find the VA that suits your needs? Where do you look? I mean, because myself, I haven't got a VA. I would love to actually be able to hire somebody, but I wouldn't know where to look to find the VA that I needed. You know, so it would be great to have a VA that did sales, but it would also be great to have a VA that worked on my website and my social media, you know. So yeah, what would you do to find those different expertise?
So before you get there, I'm going to have to backstep you just one step, and I'm sorry to do this to you, but I promise it will be worth your while. Okay. The first thing you need to do is track the time that you're taking in your business.
Yeah.
If you're spending too many hours doing social media, if you're spending too many hours checking emails, if you're spending too many hours and things that are not bringing money into your business, then you're no longer you're still the CEO of your company. I'm not trying to say that, so please don't take what I'm saying the wrong way. But you are no longer having the correct payroll in your business, and you are no longer scaling your business. So the first thing you need to do is see how much time you're spending in which area before you can fully know that. The other thing I will say is, it's so funny because on the other end, we're like, oh, it's such a saturated market, and you've literally proven that really it's not. So it's so funny how that works, but it just really depends. There's going to be some that a friend can recommend to you. That would be a really great way to start. Another way would be just checking different VA Facebook pages is also a really great thing. I personally believe that Facebook really is not dead, at least not yet. And honestly, with the way that Mark Zuckerberg does everything, I highly doubt that's ever going to happen because he's very brilliant with working with Instagram and everything. But also Facebook groups. There are a ton of us out there. It's just a matter of looking for the right one for you and your company. The other thing I will say, if I could give one unsolicited piece of advice, hope you guys all don't mind, but the biggest misconception I see in this field is a lot of people believe that we're kind of more of their employee, and that's really not true. I may be a VA, but I'm a business owner. And when you delegate to me, I don't mind it at all. It's just, it's kind of the way that people come across. Like generally, honestly, when I go looking for clients, and I'm totally going to be honest on the air here. I'm going to tell you guys how it is. If you guys are giving me an application to fill out, I'm not coming to you. Because that's giving me a huge red flag. That's telling me that you see me as an employee and not as a business owner. Don't value what I have for your company. So that's one thing I will say.
Absolutely. And yeah, well, you're contracting. You're the one that owns the business, and
absolutely,
it's more a collaboration than it is an employee employment thing at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I would really like to thank you, Sam. Has anybody got any questions? Bryony, have you got any questions for Sam? No? Julia? No? Well, thank you so much for coming on and giving us a bit of that information and really good advice around actually hiring a VA and thinking about what type of VA you need and making sure that you don't just go for the cheapest the cheapest car on the lot because usually it ends up costing you way more than if you had decided to spend your money on something that would better suit you and your business.
100%. And the thing that I suggest that people kind of look at it from this perspective, you're kind of either valuing or devaluing what they do for your company.
Exactly.
And so that's what that pay really is. It's, do you truly value me at the skill set that I'm at, or or not? And that's kind of what it comes down to. Definitely. But it also, you do have to look at budget as well, and that's totally okay. I'm just saying, that's kind of why it is important to kind of figure out where your business is before hiring a VA for sure.
Excellent. Definitely. Well, I'd really like to thank Julia and Samantha, and I'm really, really sorry about the live mix-up. It's really frustrating for me. This recording will go up onto the Facebook page and onto LinkedIn as soon as it's processed. And if you could send me your details, Samantha, that would be amazing. And both the details, both Julia's and Samantha's details, contact details will be in the comments underneath the posts. And I'd like to say thank you, and thank you, Bryony, for being here and participating. It's been lovely to see you. And
Yeah,
Julia, we really look forward to next month, and it will definitely be working by then, because go
Perfect.
to a new provider if I have to.
thank you. It's been really helpful. Thank you both.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome.
Thank
Thank you for coming.